Welcome to the Denver Gazette Sports Podcast. I am your host, Chris Schmedeke, and today we are brought to you by Applewood Plumbing, Heating, and Electric. They are the proud sponsor of the Colorado Avalanche as well as this podcast. And today we are joined for the first of hopefully many times by legendary and new Denver Gazette sports columnist Mark Kiszla, live from Las Vegas. Mark, thanks for coming on. How are you today, first of all?
I'm good. And I'm more of a New Orleans guy than a Vegas guy, but I got to tell you, if you're going to have a Super Bowl in the desert, have it here in Vegas instead of Phoenix. So it's not up to me, but Phoenix, you're out of the Super Bowl rotation, and we're putting Vegas in heavy rotation for the Super Bowl.
I'm pretty sure they'll be. They announced they're going to come back to Vegas, aren't they?
Oh, they got it. They got to come back here. It's the circus. The circus that the Super Bowl has become belongs in a town, that is a circus.
That loves a circus. Yeah, that's about right. So before we jump into the Super Bowl and some Broncos, like I said, you just joined the Denver Gazette recently. Just real quick, you were at the Post for so long. Why the move to the Denver Gazette? And we are thrilled to have you.
Well, thanks. I am blessed to be at the Denver Gazette and looking forward to the opportunity. And there's a lot of great people that I've known for a long time, including Paul Klee, who's one of my dearest friends in media. Now he's my boss. So he's still my friend. He is still my friend now. Hopefully he will remain my friend. And what the Gazette offered was a chance to do my job in a way that best serves a rabid and passionate sporting public of everything from the Avalanche to the Nuggets to the Broncos to the Air Force Falcons. And I wanted to be part of a team that's first and foremost concerned and focused on winning. And that's why I made the move.
Yeah, I've been with the Gazette for about a year and a half, and I agree with everything you said. We have this passionate fan base, and I think we're doing the best we can to serve that fan base. And so it's been a great move for me. And like I said, we're excited to have you. But let's move to the big, of course, Super Bowl. You were there in Vegas. Let's talk about the game first. What do you see from this game? A rematch of a couple of years ago. Bronco fans are, of course, all familiar with the Chiefs, but they're also really familiar with the 49ers as well, with Kyle Shanahan as the coach and Christian McCaffrey as their star.
Yeah, I think it's easy rooting interest for Broncos country. I mean, the Chiefs are division rivals. So I think if you're a diehard in Broncos country, there's probably a part of you that is like, I don't wish the Chiefs any great success. And then with Christian McCaffrey, with Kyle Shanahan, two sons that grew up in Broncos country with famous fathers closely associated with Broncos country, that seems to be a natural. If you're going to choose sides and you bleed orange and blue, well, you're going to bleed whatever it is, garnet and crimson. The Niners are this Sunday. But here's the thing. I do think the Niners have the better overall team. But the Chiefs have a generational quarterback. And the number one thing when you're trying to handicap or project or predict a football game at the NFL level is who has the better quarterback. And so the Niners might be slight favorites. I suspect by the time this game kicks off, it will basically be a pick'em game. Yeah. But I would have to go with the Chiefs. I thought the Chiefs, when the Broncos basically took care of them, what was it, 24-9, right around Halloween time? I thought, this year for the Chiefs, the receivers aren't reliable enough. Their defense is much improved, but they just don't score points the way they once did, and they're not as fearsome, as intimidating a team as they once were. But they've gotten their act together in the playoffs. Baltimore looked like the most dangerous team, the meanest, roughest, toughest team. And the Chiefs went into Baltimore and basically said, we have the championship stuff.
Well, I remember a lot of people wrote the Chiefs off when they lost to the Raiders on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or whatever it was. And
Yeah,
people are like, oh, this is just not the same Chiefs team. But like you said, there's something about Patrick Mahomes. And now he won 2 road playoff games as well,
right.
which,
He did. He did. And it's hard to argue with any of his achievements at such a relatively young point in his career. But I'm one that I guess I'm old, and so I guess maybe I have a finer appreciation, or maybe I just have nostalgia for the way the NFL once was. So I have been slow to toast Patrick Mahomes as potentially the greatest quarterback of all time, but he's on that path now. He wins this game, and he might not quite be at the level of Joe Montana or Tom Brady or John Elway or whoever you might pick, but he's in the conversation now if he wins this game for sure.
Yep. A little bit back to Broncos country and the 49ers. Do you think there's a little bit of what could have been with the Broncos and Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers?
I don't think there's any doubt about that. There's a couple things here. The Broncos had an opening just a season after they won the Super Bowl. And this gets to the heart of this long playoff drought, I think. John Elway was impressed with Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle Shanahan has said that he took the Niners gig, but it wouldn't have necessarily been his first choice because the Niners were a mess at that time. They were coming off a 2-14 record. They were the worst team, not in the league, but in the NFC. They had the worst record in the NFC. As I understand it, the Broncos front office team had 2 choices in their mind. We can try to hire Kyle Shanahan and tear it all down and rebuild. But John Elway, being the competitive sort that he is, the highly competitive sort, said, hey, barely a year ago, we were Super Bowl champions. We're not that far away. I think we can tweak it and get right back there. And he thought, okay, defensive side of the ball, Vance Joseph, we're built on defense right now. I'll hire the defensive coach. John Elway underestimated the depth of the Broncos' problems, and they've never quite gotten out of that hole ever since.
I was going to say they still haven't really recovered. A little bit more on the Niners. What do you think of this Brock Purdy story? Because it's pretty amazing.
It is amazing, and I liked him a lot at Iowa State, but I can't give myself too much credit. I said I watched him play at Iowa State, and I thought, you know what, this is a guy that's going to make money in the NFL. But I thought as a backup, and I thought he'd be a very competent backup. And he's a very confident guy. I was talking, he's been a big story this week, of course, because he was Mr. Irrelevant to Super Bowl starting quarterback. And what people have consistently said is he may not have entered the 49ers camp as Mr. Irrelevant with a lot of swag and like, no, I'm way better than everybody thinks. But his confidence was real, and he felt from the start that he belonged. He told me when I asked him this week, hey, how much did it matter to you that Kyle Shanahan, your head coach, showed belief in you early and made you believe that you could be a starting quarterback in the NFL? And he looked at me and he said, I had a lot of belief in myself, but to tell you the truth, I wasn't sure if Kyle Shanahan believed in me or not. So I had to win that respect, but he certainly did. And Christian McCaffrey will tell you that this guy is the real deal. He's not just a Cinderella story. He's the real deal. And I think it does show you that they got down big in the NFC Championship game. I thought, all right, Purdy's turned back into a pumpkin, but they came roaring back and they won the game.
Another interesting Bronco connection is that Brian Griese is on the coaching staff of the 49ers.
Yeah.
he has, is he the quarterback's coach or the offensive coordinator?
He's a quarterback coach. I talked to him. They talked to him middle of the week. I talked to him for about 15 minutes, basically one-on-one. And he wasn't quite sure that he wanted to be a quarterback coach, but you can tell that it invigorates him. He's having a great time with it. What the quarterbacks of the Niners will tell you is that it's easy for a head coach, say somebody, Kyle Shanahan or Sean Payton, to say, to go through the video and run the clicker back and forth, backwards and forwards, 2 days after the game, and said, here is the read you should have made. And the quarterback says, yeah, coach, I hear what you're saying, but you don't really understand all the chaos that was going on the field when I made maybe the bad play or the less than perfect play that I chose to go about it. That's why it was incomplete. Maybe you don't see everything or feel everything that I felt. And the Niners quarterback room will tell you, because Mr. Greasy has been there, done that, thrown picks, gotten sacked, lost games, that he doesn't necessarily talk in coach speak. He talks more peer to peer as quarterback to quarterback.
And there's one more Bronco connection I want to get to, and that's John Lynch as the GM of the 49ers. Yeah. The job that him and Kyle have done rebuilding the 49ers is impressive in itself, especially with Lynch being a first-time GM.
There's no doubt. And what I think is key to that situation is they were hired, I have to look it up, but within 10 days of each other, for sure. And they were hired in tandem. And they had to sit down and say, you and me, we have to do this together. We have to find a way. And it's different than the Broncos situation now, where Sean Payton comes in with a Super Bowl winning resume, and he has George Payton preceded him. Payton is the general manager, but everybody knows that Sean Payton's the boss among the two of them. And so that relationship has more challenges to it, because some of the bad personnel on the Broncos, Sean Payton, look, that wasn't my problem. That was your problem, George. And so I don't know if the team, it's harder to build that teamwork in that situation. But Lynch and Shanahan, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, worked hand in hand and side by side and shoulder to shoulder, basically from day one. So when the Niners make a big mistake, like trading draft capital to get Trey Lance, and then that doesn't work out, there's probably not very much room for finger pointing there. It's like, you and me, buddy, we decided to do this together. We're going to have to figure out how to correct this massive mistake we've just made.
And, both of these teams, the Niners and the Chiefs, are built through the draft, especially the Niners. Like, you look at those guys are drafted. And that's something right now to even kind of flip to the Broncos. The Broncos are not built through the draft, and they don't have draft picks to build through the draft either.
John Lynch, this was not one-on-one. I did talk to Greasy one-on-one for a while. Lynch was in a circle of about 15 of us, but he brought up himself that if you're building with free agents, you're probably putting a Band-Aid on the situation. And if you're building with the draft, you're probably building an organization that's built to last. And he said, players don't like hearing it, and I don't like telling players that. But those draft picks for the first handful of years in the NFL are relatively cheap talent, and it gives you much more room to work with in terms of your salary cap situation. And that's that young, cheap talent. Brock Purdy's a young and cheap talent right now. And it gives John Lynch a lot more room to operate in fixing problems on his roster or making trades for like Christian McCaffrey, like he did. And and it makes everything easier. Free agents are expensive, and if you miss on them, that's an expensive mistake.
So let's go over to the Chiefs a little bit. This team has been here. Mahomes has been here. Kelsey's been here. A lot of these guys have been here. We all know there's added hoopla around the Chiefs. You wrote about it this morning in the Denver Gazette. We all know what that hoopla is.
Tay-Tay.
Yeah, exactly. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I know all about Tay-Tay. Don't worry about it.
T-Swizzle.
Yes, we know all about it. But do you think it affects them at all?
I heard, I think it did. And I think that midseason, I don't know, slump, malaise, whatever, the Chiefs not being the Chiefs anymore. Steve Young talked about this on Radio Row just this past week, this current week. He said, okay, this is a goofball idea, but the Chiefs are telling you a fib if they said it wasn't a distraction. He said, everybody got Twitter-pated about it. The whole world got Twitter-pated about it. I got Twitter-pated about it. Your daughter got Twitter-pated about it. The ball boy got Twitter-pated about it. The left tackle got Twitter-pated about it. It was a lot of hoopla, and it was a distraction. Young said it wasn't anybody's fault. He didn't blame Tay-Tay. He didn't blame Travis. He just said it's a lot. But they learned to deal with it rather than grouching about it. They embraced it. And what I think of now is a lot of the Super Bowl is dealing with all the circus. As somebody always says, is, the cliche that's very popular. You lay a 2x4 on the ground and say, okay, walk the 2x4. It's easy. But Super Bowl week, you raise that 2x4 25 feet off the ground and say, walk that 2x4. And then you go, whoa, if I make a misstep here, it's going to hurt. The Chiefs, Tay-Tay provided that 2x4 25 feet off the ground several months ago. Right. The Chiefs been walking that way for months now. So they get to the Super Bowl and see the circus and like, we've been living in the circus for weeks and weeks and weeks. This is no big deal. I think there's actually something to that. I think that nothing is going to throw them off their game now. And they were forced to go back and refocus as a football team that was a former champ that had lost its mojo and had all the Taylor Swift hoopla introduced into the organization, and they worked their way through it and they hung together, and now they're a better team than I ever expected them to be at any point this season, and they're playing their best at the very best, most critical time of the season. Well,
and the last thing on the Chiefs is, for the longest time you didn't think about them as a defensive team, but this group is a defensive team. They harassed Lamar Jackson. They came up big against Josh Allen in the game before. They really rely a lot on that defense. They rely on Mahomes because he's one of the greatest, like you said. But their defense will probably be the key of Sunday's game.
Well, I'm not going to tell you the Chiefs' defense because the folks in Broncos country will get irritated with me if I do. So I'm not going to tell you the Chiefs' defense is as good as the Broncos defense was in Super Bowl 50, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not good at predicting games, but I got to go with the Chiefs because you've got a championship caliber defense and the best quarterback on the planet. And I don't care about, the turnover battle could turn the game on its head. But if you got one of the best defenses in the league and definitely the best quarterback in the league, Kyle Shanahan's going to have to come up with a whole bunch of stuff to counteract that.
So you're leaning Chiefs, and all of our predictions will come out in Sunday's Gazette. The whole staff is picking a score and everything, so we're not going to spoil any of that. That'll be online. We'll check that out. Let's flip over to the Broncos. Huh?
I think I've given you a pretty good hint, though.
Yeah, I got a pretty good hint on where you're going. I haven't done mine yet because I've been going back and forth.
Well, don't let me influence you because I'm never
Yeah,
right. Or
I
do let me influence you because I'm never right.
I grew up here, so the Broncos have been part of my life forever. It's hard to pick the Chiefs, but you know what the Chiefs are. I like the Niners. I've always liked the Niners, but like we talked about, as if I put my fan hat on and not my journalist hat, the what if about Kyle Shanahan is rough to get over for a lot of Broncos fans, and I think I'm in that. Paul Klee and I did a whole video on what if they would have hired him, and Paul was convinced that they would have drafted Josh Allen as well.
I think that Kyle would have had enough influence that if Kyle decided I can mold or help develop Josh Allen into a Super Bowl quarterback, that yes, they would have gone that direction. And so that draft, the quarterback that John Elway wanted was Sam Darnold.
Yep.
That went a couple picks ahead. And now Sam Darnold's trying to rehab his career with the Niners. And so because I'm not quite as dumb as I look, I sat down with Sam Darnold yesterday for about 10 minutes and said, hey, what has this process been like? Sam Darnold worked with or competed against Baker Mayfield when they were both in Carolina. Baker has rehabbed, reinvented himself as a pretty good NFL starting quarterback. It's going to get paid this offseason. Stranger things have happened than the Broncos signing Sam Darnold. Yeah. So just in case, I made sure to talk to Sam Darnold this week.
Yeah, so let's flip over the Broncos and the quarterback mess that they're in right now. You talked about Sam Darnold. That's definitely a name that people have talked about. What did you make of the whole Russell Wilson situation that went down late in the year?
It went down late in the year, but the relationship was poisoned from the start. And anybody who follows me over the last year knows that I've been hugely disappointed in Sean Payton as a head coach. Hugely. I advocated for the Broncos hiring Sean Payton and his Super Bowl resume and all his victories and having the Saints as a top tier team for years and years and years. So I'm not afraid to tell you, I feel like I was wrong. And here's one example why. Everybody talked about, wrote about, yacked about, screamed about Sean Payton yelling at Russell Wilson on the sideline in Detroit.
Yep.
But my feeling is, and I've talked to people this week at the Super Bowl about it, is Sean Payton never believed that Russell Wilson could be a winning quarterback for him. And I think the perfect example of that is the way the Broncos started the season, trying to do it more Sean Payton's way rather than Sean Payton molding his offense to a way that he could win with Russell Wilson. And the Broncos got off to such a bad start doing it Sean Payton's way that Payton finally had to change the way they played offense to make it more conducive to Russell Wilson succeeding. I don't think that, looking back at it with all the clues, Russell Wilson tried to make this work with Sean Payton. Is he a perfect person? No. But he tried to be the quarterback that Sean Payton wanted him to be. And I don't think Sean Payton ever believed that Russell Wilson was the quarterback he wanted to run this offense. And I think that poisoned the Broncos season from day one, from before day one.
So where does this end up? Like, most people think that he will get cut, released, whatever. I mean, they're not going to be able to trade him. No one's going to want that contract. But what do the Broncos do? Do you think they draft someone early? Is it Sam Darnold or someone like that this year? Because like you talked about with Sean Payton, he does not seem like a very patient football coach.
No, he doesn't. So that's the question. Could you trade up to the top 5 and get one of the top 3 quarterbacks, at least as according to the draft picks. It would be a heavy price to pay, and it would cost you what few draft picks you have left in the cupboard, and almost certainly Pat Surtain as well. But if you really believe that the dude from North Carolina or USC or LSU is a future and consistent Pro Bowl quarterback, I don't think you have any choice. Go ahead. Push all your remaining chips to the middle of the table and go for it. If you stay where you are at, 12, and you take Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr., you just better be committed that you truly believe he can be the guy for the next 10 years rather than just rolling the dice. What are they going to do? I don't know. I think they have to make every effort to get the best quarterback possible in the first round of the draft, whether they move up or stay the same or move back. I do think they'll bring in a veteran one way or the other. And do I think it will be Sam Darnold? I don't know, but he was sitting there this week, so I sat down with him just in case. So he'll remember my goofy face if he walks in that door.
Yeah, when you guys are all around his locker next year, he'll remember you from Vegas.
Hey, I said, hey, man, there's only one guy here that when you were all alone at this table on a media day that came over and sat down. And somebody else sat down with Sam Darnold right before me, and they had their laptop, and they showed a bunch of video of Brock Purdy like in high school. And it was a good gig. It was a good shtick. It was like, everybody says Brock Purdy isn't that athletic. Look at him here. You know, he's running around on a high school field. But they weren't talking about Sam Darnold. They were asking Sam Darnold to talk about Brock Purdy. And I sat down and said, no, man, I want to talk about you.
Yeah. So, you know, they're in camp hell. We know that. They've talked about that. You know, how different is this roster starting next year? There are a lot of familiar faces that are going to be gone that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, in any given season, if you're not a playoff team, your roster churn can easily be 30%, basically 1 out of 3 guys. And I would suspect that it will be close to that with this team. Can it tell you that, you know, can I go down the list? Will Josie Jewell be back on this team or not? I would have to guess no, but I don't know that. But I do think there will be players of that fans have embraced and like, as well as Josie Jewell, that will not be on this team on opening night or day or Sunday this upcoming season.
Let's flip gears before we go and talk about something more positive, and that's the defending NBA champion, Denver Nuggets. Before today was the trade deadline. The Nuggets did not do anything. They really were kind of stuck. I think they liked their roster. You probably agree with that. But real quick, before we dive into that, you know, you've been in this market for a long time. Have you ever seen anything like Nikola Jokic?
No, he's the best athlete. Well, now I get in trouble with that because some people question how athletic he is, but he's the best player ever to wear a Denver uniform in any sport. And that is with great appreciation for John Elway and Patrick Waugh and Joe Sakic and Todd Helton and anybody you could name. Nikola Jokic is the best player ever to represent the city of Denver and the state of Colorado, period, of all time. That's how good he is. He can be, you know, people a year ago, maybe I heard arguments when I was at the NBA finals with a bunch of, you know, veteran NBA reporters. Okay, is Joker better than Akeem Olajuwon? Well, is he better than Shaquille O'Neal? He's climbing up that ladder, and I think already he's one of the 20 greatest NBA players of all time, provided he stays healthy and interested and engaged and doesn't want to move back to Serbia in the next 3 or 4 years. And he has a chance to be one of the 10 greatest NBA players of all time. And I don't think the Nuggets, as they're now they had to stay pat at the trade deadline. They didn't have the financial flexibility to do really anything. Do I think the roster is quite good enough to win the NBA title again? No, I don't. But because Joker is so great, they're in the conversation for sure. It would not shock me if they won it again.
Is the roster missing that? Is it missing this year's Bruce Brown?
Yes. I think Brucey Brown was beyond. I would say, this Joker was number one. Jamal was number two to winning the championship last year. As it turned out, Aaron Gordon was number three. But for most of the season, I would have put Bruce Brown as more key to their success than Aaron Gordon. But he was a strong number four. And without Bruce Brown, I'm not sure they would have won the championship. And the key to me now is, without any question, and I thought this I think I got right ahead of time, and I haven't changed my mind at all. Peyton Watson is the whole key to this deal.
Yeah.
He has to continue to grow. He has room to grow. Veteran players in a lot of sports have told me for a lot of years, guys I respect, very talented players, the way your team in any sport gets better during the course of the year is a young guy really blossoms. And he has far more talent. Nothing against Christian Brown. Peyton Watson is a far more talented basketball player in my mind than Christian Brown. And Peyton Watson is the player that can be the special player off the bench. Is he ready to do it this season? That's what I'm so interested in watching.
One last thing before I let you go, and I appreciate you doing this. This has been a fun talk for sure. Have you ever seen a time where, right now the Broncos are almost secondary to the Nuggets and almost a little bit to the Avs too?
Yes. This is a Broncos town. It's been a Broncos town for the 40 years that I've been in Colorado. And before that, since at least the time of, it's been a Broncos town since Randy Gradishar's first bloody knuckle, for sure. But it isn't the Broncos are not the most interesting thing in town at all. And so why fans in Denver and in Colorado might bleed orange and blue still, if you want if you don't want to bleed, if you want to bleed, go ahead, follow the Broncos. But if you want to stand up and cheer, you gotta go with the Nuggets or the Avalanche, don't you?
I think so. And sorry, one more thing before we go. Randy Gradishar will be probably elected to the Hall of Fame tonight. You're going to the NFL Honors Show for that. How important is that to Broncos history? Because I mentioned this to our Rockies writer when Todd Helton went into the Hall of Fame. Like, this is an old school Bronco that they've been waiting forever for him to go to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I was mentioning this with Paul Klee earlier this week, is that Randy and a lot of people that moved into Colorado lately, and welcome y'all, and subscribe to the Gazette.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, but Randy Gradishar is the 1977 Ford Bronco with the native bumper sticker on the back.
Yes,
and if you grew up here and you loved the Broncos back when it really was a dusty old cow town, that's what Randy Gradishar represents. Old Denver, the way Denver used to be, and the pride that a lot of people that grew up here have in growing up and living here. That's why he's so.
It'll be a special night tonight I think for sure. I think it'll be a very special night. All right, kids, thanks for coming on and doing this. I really appreciate getting a chance to talk with you. Let's hope to do more in the future. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple or Spotify. It's also on denvergazette.com if you want to listen to it. And you can go to denvergazette.com to see all of Mark's coverage from the Super Bowl and all of our coverage of everything in Colorado sports. So kids, enjoy Vegas. I really enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Like doing it.